broken, don't know where you're going, losing your identity. You're so caught up in hiding, but everybody sees. You're never gonna feel, you're never gonna heal, you're never gonna know what's fake or real till you know who you are. You're lying to your face and running in a race. You're never gonna win till you find your place, and you know who you are, who you are. Crawling and falling, but no one hears you calling. When you're in a world of lies, yeah, till your bubble bursts and the truth you first, you're always coming out. You're never gonna feel, you're never gonna heal, you're never gonna know what's fake or real till you know who you are. You're lying to your face and running in a race. You're never gonna win till you find your place, and you know who you are. You take yourself apart to medicate your pain. It shouldn't be this hard to believe in you again. Who you are. Na 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 na. Who you are.
When there is an ending, there was a beginning. Every victim has a picture to paint. Every true crime has its time and place. Please join our MJ podcast, the series Deep into the Woods, Missing Persons, Unsolved Crimes, and the Does. Welcome to our MJ podcast. This is an MJ News Spot, Part 16, the series Missing Persons, Unsolved Crimes, and the Does. My name is Mark, and I will be your host for tonight's show. We are coming to you from our home office in Plattsburgh, New York. Missing persons. 1 minute they are there, the next minute they are gone without a trace. On the average, 90,000 people are missing in the United States at any given time. 50,569 are adults, 33,388 are under 18 years of age, 43,415 are male, 40,530 are female, 47,254 are white, 27,676 are black, 5,503 race isn't specified, 1,487 Native Americans. We have noticed on several cases there isn't much info about the case. which makes it hard to investigate. When you find such a case with little info, contact the detective in charge and see if you can learn more. Unsolved murders. Every year in America, 6,000 killers get away with murder. The percentage of homicides that go unsolved in the United States has risen, even as the homicide rate has fallen to levels last seen in the 1960s. Despite dramatic improvements in DNA analysis and forensic science, police fail to make an arrest in more than 1/3 of all homicides. There are over 64,000 unsolved murder cases on the books on any given year. About 1/3 of all murders go unsolved. This is for various reasons, which can include, but are not limited to, stranger on stranger homicide. Family and friends lists are often where you will find the name of the killer. A total stranger is much harder to find. In a stranger on stranger crime, it can be difficult to identify the perpetrator since there is no link between the two. If fingerprint and DNA records don't exist for the unknown perpetrator, or if none are found, it is sometimes difficult to find another way to identify those who had the opportunity, ability, and the motive. Lack of motivation. Nothing was taken. The victim was not sexually assaulted. Without any sort of motivation, you find it very hard to begin with suspects, aside from family and friends who must be ruled out. Disposal of remains away from the murder site. This means most evidence is lost. This is a countermeasure for the killer to lose a lot of the evidence. Lifestyle of the victim. Prostitutes are often targets of murder because they work at night and they get into cars with strangers. They do not keep client records, and sometimes they are not even reported as missing. In addition, some jobs require a person to travel by themselves to and from jobs at night, making them more like a target. They hold jobs that are considered higher risk, such as working in gas stations or mini-marts at night. If DNA is present, you still have to have a person to match it against. If they are not in the DNA database, that DNA does no good until you have someone to compare it against. Lack of a suspect who is actually guilty may mean the crime is never solved. Bad police work. This may come from incompetence, but often it's the lack of manpower and not enough departmental resources to investigate properly. New cases almost always take priority, and there are always new cases. The police are usually as frustrated, if not more so, as the public is that a case remains unsolved. Small towns or towns where departments do not cooperate is also a problem. The murder of John Benet Ramsey remained unsolved for many reasons, but lack of cooperation between the investigative agencies was the major reason. Transient nature of a killer. A person who travels a lot could kill someone in California and be back in New York in a few hours by air. If it was a stranger on stranger killing, it's even worse. Truck drivers, for instance, travel the country, and if one committed a crime, they could be 3 states away by the time the body was found. Let's take a pause for the cause, and we will be back in a moment. MJA would like to give a special shout out to Shiloh's Restaurant, located at 202 Central Street in Woodsville, New Hampshire. MJA and groups like ours have eaten there several times. The food is excellent and they serve alcohol. The service is Class A and the prices are fair. It has great atmosphere and it's kid friendly. Once again, that's Shiloh's Restaurant, located in Woodsville, New Hampshire. Please check it out.
My lover's got humor. He's the giggle at a funeral. Knows everybody's disapproval. I should have worshipped him sooner. If the heavens ever did speak, he's the last true mouthpiece. Every Sunday's getting more bleak. A fresh poison each week. We were born sick, you heard them say it. My church offers no absolutes. It tells them worship in the bedroom. The only heaven I'll be sent to is when I'm alone with you. I was born sick, but I love it. Command me to be well. Amen. 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 Take me to church. I'll worship like a dog at the shrine of your life. I'll tell you my sins and you can sharpen your knife. Offer me that deathless death. Good God, let me give you my life. Take me to church. I'll worship like a dog at the shrine of your life. I'll tell you my sins so you can sharpen your knife. Offer me my deathless death. Good God, let me give you my life.
Welcome to our MJ podcast. This is an MJ News Spot, Part 16. The series, Missing Persons, Unsolved Crimes, and the Does. Here are some more reasons why people get away with murder. Financial resources of the accused. The wealthy can pay for high-priced lawyers who block the actions of police or get them found not guilty at trial. Perhaps the person was guilty, but the case must remain open because of the wealth of the guilty party. If O.J. was guilty of the murders, as the civil suit found him to be, he got off scot-free. Young killers who kill to see what it's like. They usually pick strangers, and often, contrary to TV shows, once they find out, they do not kill again. Their lives somehow stabilizes and they move on, unpunished and the crime unsolved. The most famous case of this nature I can think of is the Brown's Chicken Massacre in Illinois. It took 9 years to solve it because 2 teenagers killed the 7 people in the restaurant because they wanted to see what it felt like. They never killed again. It was solved after the girlfriend of one of the killers took his confession to the police, and then they matched his DNA to a partially eaten piece of food. So this one was solved, but only by luck. For 9 years, it was unsolved. The victim was the victim of a serial killing. There are almost always stranger abductions, and the motivations are only known to the killer. The police must realize the nature of the murder, or they may not, but either way, it's very hard to solve. Lack of a body of the deceased. You can even have a confession, but without a body, you cannot prove murder, at least most of the time. Technically, you don't have to have a body. In reality, you kind of do. If Steve's wife goes missing, how do we know she did not run off on a whim with a guy she met at Starbucks earlier in the week? Maybe Steve killed her and the police think he did it, but without cause to get a warrant and discovering evidence or complete a cleanup of the crime scene, there's little to prove she is dead, let alone that he murdered her. The sheer oddness or brutality of the crime. No one is sure who did it or why. Determining if a death is natural or accidental or a murder. Suicide is the new homicide. Here lately, several cases have been ruled a suicide or accidental, have been overturned to homicide. In most cases, it was because of the victim's family didn't believe that their loved one would have took their own life. They ran their own investigation and produced enough evidence that the suicide was overturned to homicide. If anyone is thinking about committing murder, the odds are on your side that you will be caught. 2/3 of all murderers are apprehended or the crimes solved. Sometimes the murderer kills himself or herself, so they are technically not punished, but nonetheless, the murder is solved. The unidentified. Names given to the unidentified are John Does for the males and Jane Does for the females. There are over 40,000 unidentified persons in the United States. You would think, with over 90,000 people missing on any given day, that a lot of these unidentified people would have been identified. In many cases, I know some law enforcement agencies are undermanned, overworked, don't have the resources needed to solve a case, and need more seasoned detectives to work on these cases. If you look at everything as a whole, the unsolved murders, the missing persons, the unidentified, it seems many law enforcement agencies need a lot more training to meet the demand of the unsolved cases. But let's be honest, some law enforcement agencies or their detectives have trouble going the extra mile to solve a case. I have seen documents and case files that were never investigated. I have seen a state police detective get a DNA kit from NamUs to gather a DNA sample from a subject 6 blocks from the police station. Knowing the person was in bad health, the DNA kit sat in a drawer for 6 weeks with no DNA taken, and the subject died. It took another 2 years to find a relative to gather the DNA sample from. I have seen police agencies not follow proper protocols while doing an investigation. I have seen jurisdiction issues where several law enforcement agencies not wanting to share info on the same case. Sometimes these could be the main causes why a lot of these cases are still unsolved. I have a quote for our listeners. This quote should be in the investigator's manual. These words are so true when you want to be the best investigator you can be. There is no better than adversity. Every defeat, every heartbreak, every loss contains its own seed, its own lesson on how to improve your performance the next time. Malcolm X. When I worked undercover out on the streets, my handler told me the very first day, doing this work, you're going to laugh, you're going to cry, you're going to be content, you're going to be sad, you're going to get mad, and in some cases, you will want revenge. There will come a time where you just want to kill or beat the suspect, that sometimes justice isn't fair or just. When you come out on the other end, you will be on top of your game because you put those feelings aside. And the true satisfaction is when you hear the jail doors slam on the suspect, and in court they are convicted of all charges. My handler, Captain Jack, was totally right about what I would go through during this undercover work. Always remember, folks, if you ever get bored with nothing to do, well, take a walk deep in the woods. You might be surprised at what you might find. I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. That's the end of our MJ News Spot, Part 16. My name is Mark. I was your host for tonight's show, and we say to all of you, good night from Plattsburgh, New York.